Let's have a Wednesday on Golic and Golic. Nobody circles the wagons and then promptly throws their former head coach underneath their wheels, quite like the Buffalo Bills. Should today's press conference from Terry Pegula be a warning sign for things to come after the firing of former head coach Sean McDermott? And while beef is on the menu, look no further than in the NFC South. Baker Mayfield had the time yesterday in his offseason to let the Twitter fingers get loose with some choice words for his former head coach Kevin Stefanski, who now makes his new home with the Atlanta Falcons. Can't give me those games soon enough. And the Yankees win. Perhaps jealous that another team's payroll was being the one drawing claims of ruining baseball, have now gotten into the offseason spending. We'll talk to MLB Insider over at ESPN, Jeff Passan, about the Bronx Bombers' big signing as we welcome you into Golic and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr. Going to be a fun day on that front. We got some newly minted Baseball Hall of Famers as well. But on a day where the Buffalo Bills have certainly made news in one regard, announcing that they intend to interview their former offensive coordinator and former Giants head coach Brian Daboll, who many figured would be a strong candidate to potentially make his way into the mix, given his prior relationship with Josh Allen, the success that those two had, despite the failings at the end of his time in New York. This comes with a massive warning sign to him and anyone else. We had not seen Bills owner Terry Pegula do any sort of public interviews since 2019. Obviously, his wife has had some health problems in the meantime that have taken his attention elsewhere, but he got to the podium today alongside GM and President of Football Operations Brandon Beane to talk about the decision made to fire Sean McDermott. He cited the result of the game in Denver playing a massive factor into this situation. Also went on to talk about the signing of Keon Coleman, or I should say the drafting of Keon Coleman, being a decision from the coaching staff, and saying Brandon Beane was just being a team player in that, as he throws the current player of his team under the bus, the former head coach of his team under the bus, and in theory, offensive coordinator Joe Brady, who is still technically a candidate for a job for the job. Dad, how big a disaster was this press conference for the Bills and their management today?
You know, Brandon, it was amazing. Brandon Beane's the one who got asked about the Keon Coleman, and he just started to answer, and Terry Pegula interrupted him and said, "I'll handle this," and basically called Brandon Beane a team player, saying that Keon Coleman was the coach's decision, that Brandon Beane didn't want to draft him, but he was just being a team player in drafting him. I wonder where Keon Coleman was when he was catching all this shrapnel, by the way. And then there's video of Brandon Beane at the combine where Keon Coleman ran a 4.540, and Brandon Beane even heard saying, "Well, I'm glad he did, because it'll basically be easier to get him because it's a slow 40." You know, saying that he was was in contention to take him. But I mean, for an owner to step in and just so back the guy he kept and so throw under the bus the coach that he just let go, you don't see that a lot. Now, there are people that are going to be like, "Hey, it's his ball. He signs a check, and if it's his truth, then so be it. He's allowed to say it." But man, oh man, I mean, rarely is it one person's fault. Now, you can a lot of times you see a coach and GM fired together, but here you see a coach fired and the GM actually promoted. So you're right. The next coach that comes in has to know that the owner and the GM and now president in Brandon Beane are walking basically side by side forever, whatever coach is coming in, be it Brian Daboll or somebody else. But very interesting.
I think that's got to be the unnerving part, though, right? If you're the head coach walking into this, you're pretty much all but assured that this is going to be on you, that the ownership does not view any of what happened through the lens of the GM of this roster. At one point, Terry Pegula said this is a great roster with good coaching, and then reference something else. And I'm like, oh, we're really just going to fully put this on Sean McDermott, despite the fact from the outside looking in, most analysts and people looked at that roster as one with severe flaws, especially in places like an aging back end in the middle of the defense, certainly the wide receiver core where they swung and missed on some guys to try and go around Keon Coleman, who there were multiple clips. Are teams ever going to realize that when you agree to do Hard Knocks, we have footage of the things that you say? And when you say those things and then later try and contradict those things, that footage will be brought back readily by the internet to make you look silly. Like, that's just wild to me that that's still happening in this day and age in 2026. So I don't know, does it make it less appealing for someone like Brian Daboll to look at this situation now, seeing ownership in a way that we haven't seen meddle with the Bills? Sabres fans, remember this is the same ownership group, will tell you this has been their issue with the Pegulas since they took over ownership, is the meddling they feel like has gone on with that franchise here. Should this be a concern for Daboll and anyone else taking the job?
You know, when you look at the jobs that are available, be it Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, those are really the jobs, really Buffalo and Baltimore, right? Maybe you kind of, if you want to be a head coach again, those are the two prime jobs that are left outside. There's Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Vegas, and Arizona. Do you kind of say, okay, that's not the greatest thing in the world, but I'm getting, Josh Allen and a pretty good roster. Listen, there are reasons Sean McDermott obviously got them to a point. Sean McDermott, a defensive guy, likes the two high safeties, likes to play nickel, makes it susceptible to the run. And when you get to the playoffs where they want to play more a good pass defense, but you get to the playoffs, you get better quarterbacks that pass on you well or run on you well. Actually, in the Denver game, in the 15 playoff games that McDermott coached, this was the lowest pressure rate that the defense got on the offense in McDermott's time as in the playoffs. So listen, you can point to factors, but the way Pegula is going about it is certainly different, without question. But I think Josh Allen and some of the other players on that roster make this too good of a job to pass up. Again, if you have a choice between Buffalo and Baltimore, you may say, well, I'll slide Baltimore's way so I don't have to deal with this. But those are really the two high-end jobs left.
Yeah, I think ultimately, like, if you're Brian Daboll, the Josh Allen of it all is probably enough to consider wanting to revive your coaching career in a way you could have success. Now, they've got free agents on the offensive line. Aaron Kromer, their offensive line coach, announced his retirement this year, and that was the other strength of the team. Like, look no further than this year's Philadelphia Eagles. Just because you've got the great offensive line now doesn't mean that's going to hold year to year in the same way for the team that's the most recent proxy for a huge hammerhead on rushing. But this, to me, I don't know, Dad, just when you're looking for competent ownership, sometimes it's better to say nothing at all and kind of leave it to the imagination. Like going out and saying, if you're Terry Pegula, that, we didn't make this decision because of one bad officiating call, but we made this decision based off the result that I saw in Denver. Like those things go hand in hand. Those things are inextricably linked. I don't know how you could try and make that claim.
Completely agree. One play, it could go either way. There are those that say completely an interception, those that say that was a catch. That's a catch. Buffalo, most likely, is playing in the AFC Championship game, and Sean McDermott's still the coach. So to base everything off of one game where one play meant so much in that game seems a little bit odd. I completely agree with that. But again, I do think, especially with Daboll, the relationship with Josh Allen will supersede anything. And listen, it is a good roster. It's going to change some. Every roster changes. Good rosters, bad rosters, they change. Not everybody always returns. But Josh Allen is the linchpin to this thing. Still has plenty of good years left. Now in an AFC East, where all of a sudden now you're dealing with New England, feels like deja vu. Right from more than 5 years ago when New England ran this division. So we'll see. Again, surprising, because when coaches look at a team, they do look at ownership, quarterback, roster, and ownership right now. You got to be going, whoa, this guy did not waste any time throwing the former coach under the bus.
I think it's just like anything else. Like we went through this with the College Football Playoff Committee this year, and when the explanations lack logic and invites you to draw criticisms about the thought process that gets you to these decisions and the people in charge of these things going forward. And I think that's the ultimate net negative. Now, again, for a franchise in the Bills that had largely gone unmeddled with relative to some other situations in Buffalo, now you invite this here to where, on its surface, again, if you told me the Bills fired Sean McDermott because, hey, they lack confidence this year, and no matter what the result was, this was always going to be a possibility, that's a little more understandable than, yes, I made this decision because everyone was sad in the locker room after we lost to the Broncos, and saying, hey, this roster's not perfect, but we still think Brandon Beane can lead us to the places we want to go, versus now we just don't think they were coached good enough, despite the fact that you just said, hey, that lowest pressure rate does have something to do with the Jimmies and the Joes in addition to the X's and O's. Like, that's the thing. You create a binary here that I don't think sustainable going forward for them. And so, like you said, they're going to have to go in now and kind of rebuild the relationship with Keon Coleman, depending on what happens with Joe Brady, potentially that as well, since you did put this on a coaching staff that could potentially still be here. So it's just another one of those reminders that just because you've got money and have made good decisions to get it in other areas doesn't necessarily make you the best fit for making those decisions and having to explain them in here. So we'll wait and see. But again, I think the most important thing for Bills fans is your hope has to be they go out here, hire the best possible coach. If it is Brian Daboll, the lure of Josh Allen is still enough. And then you go back to hearing from your ownership group very little again, like you had before. And this doesn't become a theme going forward. The relationship with Beane's going to be something to monitor, certainly. And we'll see if the decision-making changes demonstrably, despite the evidence again from Hard Knocks that he was a part of that. Let's get to the other bit of internet beef that we had going on yesterday. This was riveting. So Baker Mayfield, who is in his offseason, like most of the rest of the NFL players not in the final four teams, had the time on Twitter the other day and went out here to respond to some shade thrown at him by a fan online who referenced, in the number of failings going on with the Cleveland Browns, the failure of the Baker Mayfield and Deshaun Watson eras in Cleveland. And in response to that, Baker Mayfield decided to throw up this tweet. Failed is quite a reach there, pal. Still waiting on a call or text from him, meaning Browns head coach turned Falcons head coach Kevin Stefanski, after I got shipped off like a piece of garbage. Can't wait to see you twice a year, coach. This tweet Baker was quoting referenced these things as failings that Kevin Stefanski had to overcome and now would be in better position to do so at an organization like the Falcons. How fired up are you for that first meeting in the NFC South next year? Because this seems like good old-fashioned genuine hate.
Listen, Baker Mayfield had 4 years in Cleveland. One of the years he was 11-5, made the playoffs. He ended up throwing 92 touchdowns, 56 interceptions. Baker is certainly a player that loves to carry a chip on his shoulder, right? It kind of motivates him. He's hardcore like that. When my thought is, listen, you know what, it's easier said than done of taking things personal and not. At the end of the day, it's a business. You know what? They got rid of Baker and they moved on. If we're looking for a kumbaya moment to call him and say, you know what, we're going to miss you. Sorry, it didn't work out. I don't really have anything for you, quite honestly. If that's what you need to feel, you know, a part of it or wanted or that there was a relationship there, okay, that's great. Maybe that's Baker. But now, again, I come at it from a 10th round choice. He comes at it from the first overall pick in the draft, where you're certainly treated a little bit different. But when I first got out and would still travel around and talk to young players, so one thing I always told them, and again, it's so much easier said than done. Don't take anything personal. It's a business. But some people take it personal, and Baker takes his personal.
He certainly does. And I can understand like the framing of this from the poster, right? Him taking that personal, because Baker was the highest point of success that they had in that time period. He was the one that got them to the playoffs. He was a guy that, again, played hurt in a year where he acknowledged it. We all acknowledged it. And then we disregarded it in the result, which is what happens. You're out on the field and that's the way it goes. And I do think it is a position that you and I probably can't understand. Certainly I can't, of when you're the first round pick in an organization, your relationship is different. You are inextricably tied to that place in a way that's different from almost every other pick there. You are the vanity pick. You're tied to them in so many ways. And so when it goes south like that, it I'm sure is jarring to feel like that. And Baker Mayfield's whole football journey after that had been one jarring whip around until he found his way in Tampa Bay. I guess the net of all this to me is I love it. Like, we bemoan all the time the modern state of sports, where the way that people have come up, whether it's through recruitment or the advent of free agency and the portal in college, that so many guys are so familiar, there are very fewer roots and even fewer teams that actually hate each other. To have this now as the backbone of the rivalry, like, I can't wait to see the cameras on them at the end of the first Falcons-Buccaneers game. It's going to be incredible.
Oh, and make no mistake, I am a huge fan of Baker Mayfield and the way he plays and the attitude that he plays with. I love the way he plays the game. I just may differ on his thought process of his reaction years ago to this, but again, I can't relate as a 10th rounder, him being the number 1 pick overall. But he has always been a guy that put a chip on his shoulder, right? Tom Brady had to find a chip, right? Because he was such a great quarterback, but he always tried to find something. Baker, every now and then something comes up that says, oh yeah, oh, okay, yeah, this is, I'm going to remember this.
I mean, Tom Brady had the chip from his draft position, right? Baker was the number 1 overall pick in the draft. Tom Brady was passed up by a million teams and had to wait until the end of it and work his way up in a much different way. But Baker's slights have come since then. What'd you make of the defense of the Browns and Kevin Stefanski from Joe Thomas, the former Hall of Fame offensive tackle for the Cleveland Browns, who had his response that said, I could be wrong, but I've heard communication's a two-way street, and there are no laws against you sending Stefanski a text or calling him after you got traded. I feel like if you're going to say, hey, it's not the responsibility on one side, certainly it's not on the other. Where do you feel or the line is when it comes to this kind of communication?
Well, I mean, I try not to take anything personal, though I did when I played as well. That's why I will always say it's easier said than done. But I'm not sure Baker got traded away. Was he going to call or communicate with Stefanski of, hey, enjoyed my time there, or you know what, sorry you guys gave up on me? I'm not sure what the conversation he wanted back that way was. Though, again, I'm not sure of the conversation Baker Mayfield was looking for either, right? The Browns moved on from him. You move on.
What about, like, you? I mean, you were in Philadelphia for 6 years before you signed in free agency with the Miami Dolphins. Right. Was there any conversation with, your former coaches when you left there? What was that process like for you relative to this?
Oh, God, no. There was none. There was absolutely none. I was forgotten immediately when I left. But again, it's a difference of a 10th rounder and a part-time starter. When I signed with Miami, basically I was a free agent, and Philadelphia said, go get an offer. So I got an offer from Miami, and I went back and sat in the general manager's office and said, okay, I got my offer. If they were to match that, I would have stayed in Philly. But they were like, you know what? We're not going to pay you that much because you make good money off the field doing your extracurricular stuff, so that can make up for it. And I'm like, that's separate. That's not the point of what I do on the field when you told me to go get an offer. So I damn well took it personally. I did. I was ticked off saying, wait a minute, you can't count what I make off the field on my own time, as football, money. But they did, and they didn't match the offer, and I left ticked off, and they certainly didn't say, hey, they didn't put their arm around me and say, we're going to miss you, Mike. There were great times together. No, it's a business, you move on.
It's a business that creates some fun feelings for us to all sort through when we get to the NFC South race next year. Coming up next, though, speaking of family business that we got to sort out, big news coming out of Los Angeles. Trouble in paradise and a rift on International Women's Day. Next on Golic and Golic. Welcome back to Golic and Golic. Boy, it seems like we've come a long way in Lakerland since the infamous video of LeBron James and Jeanie Buss on the sideline being wished a happy International Women's Day. Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. here. Big article dropped today on ESPN.com. Baxter Holmes diving into the drama surrounding Jeanie Buss and her siblings that went into the sale of the Los Angeles Lakers and the impending fallout there. Obviously, lots of salacious details when it comes to the family business, but I think even more important for this year and what the future holds for LeBron James, an interesting passage about LeBron James and Jeannie's relationship that, according to this article, had begun to sour in the waning years. Jeanie Buss had privately mused about being uneasy about LeBron James' outsized ego and control that he and Clutch Sports operated with. Didn't like that James washed his hands of the Russell Westbrook trade and the things that went there, that he was praised the savior of the franchise, bringing them back a championship after he was signed. Certainly his lack of, in her mind, according to this report, gratitude for the franchise and drafting Bronny James in the second round of the draft. And so it all leads to a point now where you had heard in the article, Dad, they had thought about maybe not re-signing LeBron James back in the day, but felt the PR hit they would take where he was at that time would be too great. But now as he sits here in the final year of his deal for the first time in his career, maybe that makes a little bit more sense that the dismount might not be as clean and celebrated as people expected if this is the way the relationship's characterized behind closed doors.
Yeah, it seems the relationships have really started to change, especially with Jeanie and her siblings. Remember, Jeanie Buss, their dad died in 2013, and the infighting almost started immediately between the 6 siblings to the point where Jeanie Buss basically fired her 5 siblings, and some of the siblings wanted to sell right after Jeanie Buss died for a valuation of like $1 billion or a total of like $1 billion, and Jeanie smartly said, no, we're holding off, and to the tune of a $10 billion valuation of selling 51%, so for $5 billion. So all the kids definitely made out in this. But yeah, the relationship between the siblings has deteriorated, and Jeanie Buss and LeBron, which was thought was such a close relationship at the time, has certainly soured as Jeanie talks about LeBron's ego. And you mentioned the different situations, not taking accountability for Russell Westbrook, not having gratitude for drafting Bronny. So it does seem like this is going to be the end for LeBron in a Lakers uniform.
And it usually is silly the way most of these things end. Like this is similar to the end of what went on in Dallas with Jimmy Johnson and ownership there.
Yep.
What went on at the end of the Brady and Belichick dynasty with Robert Kraft involved. Especially true for rich people. They want credit. They want credit for whatever goes on. And it doesn't matter if you're Jerry Jones and you got tons of money on the outside of this and this is just your fun pet project, or if you're the Buss family and this is your identity. Your money has come from the family business. And everyone making fun of you for X, Y, and Z things hits even harder when that's the case. But at the end of all of it, they want to feel like they can take credit for what's gone on. And we know the history of LeBron James, whether it's for great coaches like Eric Spoelstra, who's acquitted himself well after, other star players on the team, you're almost always taking a backseat to LeBron James because Mike makes right. And so this is just another example of now this becomes easier for ownership to maybe flex that position late in LeBron's career when he's not quite the same player he was before.
Well, it's also easy to flex when you have a young superstar and arguably the top 3 best players in the game of Luka, right? If you didn't have Luka, it would still be building each year around LeBron. Now they have Luka, who they're going to build around for the future. So it's easier to push the older guy to the side when you have the young superstar.
No question. And I think with how well publicized the courtship was with Luka Doncic, everything about that, there did seem to be a very clear idea in mind of trying to make sure everyone got the right amount of credit for this inside that organization, not named LeBron James. So something to keep an eye on as we get on the home stretch of this season. You can hear more about this and other great NBA news on Countdown Live, presented by Prime with our buddy Stan Verrett. It comes up right after us here on FanDuel Sports Network, 5:30 p.m. Eastern. Get you all the news and information you need to go and be a better, smarter sports fan heading into the night of games here on the network. So don't miss it. Stick around here right after us. Stick around right after the break. Ben Roethlisberger with some strong advice for his former franchise at the quarterback position. Next on Golic and Golic. Golic Golic, Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr. Jeff Passan going to stop by in a bit to go over the Major League Baseball offseason that we've had. But college football has now reached its offseason here. The national champion was crowned on Monday, and that means a few other players had some decisions to make. Most notably, 2 of the star performers from that title game, D'Angelo Pons and Ruben Bain, the star cornerback and pass rusher, respectively, both announced their commitment to playing the Senior Bowl upcoming. Now, Pons, according to Mel Kiper's position rankings, is about the 5th-ranked corner, could differ depending on each person's study of them. But Bain, on the other side, listed as the number 1 defensive end in this class. You surprised that he's opting to participate in this, given the fact that pretty much anyone was talking about drafting him in the top 5 already?
Yeah, I mean, right now, we'll get to the mock draft. Mel has him going number 7 to Washington as the 3rd defensive player being taken, but that certainly could change. He could be a top 5 guy. He's a beast. I am a little surprised because we know that Senior Bowl, it's not the game so much, it's the week of workouts that all the scouts go to and like to watch when you're doing one-on-ones and different drills for position drills, offense against defense, to kind of measure against the better players. And I don't know if I were him. Now, I was a projected second rounder basically going into my senior year, and I ended up getting hurt and played about half the year. And I was going to be invited to the Senior Bowl, but I got surgery on my shoulder. I definitely would have gone to try and prove a little more, of what I could do. But I in Ruben Bain's position, well, I don't know. I don't know if I would take that chance, because it seems like you can only hurt yourself. And I don't mean just physically, which of course you can, but positionally as well. Now, do I think everything should be based on practice at the Senior Bowl? No, but you are in pads and you are going against the supposed other really good players around the country. So it could have a negative effect. If I were Ruben Bain, I would be like, you know what? My tape speaks for itself. I'll see you at the draft.
Yeah, completely agree. Like, I never like the notion that people like to use participation in these games or any postseason event against a player's competitive nature. Like, you have an overwhelming sample size already.
Yeah.
It's something that for certain guys makes sense. And Pons is a good example of that. He was a great player on this Indiana team. He's someone who I believe is a little undersized projecting to the next level, but you saw the production in that title game. A chance to go out here against other high-level competition in yet another game could be interesting. I also do think it's interesting to the injury point you brought up for both these guys, including Bain, is they played a longer season than most of the guys that we've seen in the past. There were extra games tacked on in this. So I'm with you. It's no slight to them. I mean, Ruben Bain being a ruthless competitor and wanting to go dominate amidst conversation coming out that maybe the arm length's not ideal. There were whispers during the season, would he be more of a 3-tech in the NFL? And maybe he wants the chance to continue to cement himself as a defensive end going to the next level. I won't slight him. I'm just surprised because, like you, I figured what we'd seen already was enough. That guy's a monster, as is his running mate, Akeem Mesidor, who right now is listed as the second best defensive end on the draft board for Mel Kiper Jr.
Yeah, and Pons is not projected in Mel's first pick to go in the first round, so maybe he's a guy that's trying to get to, as you mentioned, he's ranked, fifth at his position, so maybe he could move up by going to the Senior Bowl. Really the top guys, I am so past them in the Senior Bowl. I am so past them doing drills in the combine. And like you said, having people comment, well, where's your competitiveness? That is such trash that I can't stand hearing. That's just scouts and coaches being ticked off that they can't see a player perform for them when that player has such great tape and should already be a high pick. So you can get past me with that stuff.
No, completely agree. Cosign, retweet. We've mentioned his name enough. Let's get to Mock Draft 1.0 here from Mel Kiper Jr. that did drop today. With all this in mind, as we kind of look ahead now to this season that gets going in earnest for everyone outside of the final 4 teams in the NFL, in this edition, Mel Kiper understandably has Fernando Mendoza still going number 1 overall to the Raiders, despite the rumors about Lamar Jackson that we talked with Mike Florio about yesterday. Arvell Reese, the outside linebacker out of Ohio State, going number 2 overall to the New York Jets as they look to mount a much better year 2 for the regime there. And then from there on out, Francis Mauigoa, the offensive tackle for a Miami offensive line that was dominant in the postseason. David Bailey, the incredible outside linebacker from Texas Tech this past year. And then you get to some of the more other offensive players. Carnell Tate from Ohio State, Spencer Fano from Utah, and then the aforementioned Ruben Bain. As you looked over this, Dad, was there a name that jumped out to you and a fit with a team that you saw that you liked best from this first Coma Mel's draft?
Well, I mean, obviously at number 2 with Arvell Reese, the linebacker from Ohio State. I mean, the Jets ranked 31st in the league with only 26 sacks. Will McDonald was the only player on the roster with more than 4. They need pass rushers. They absolutely need pass rushers. So, and he's a guy that could put pressure on the quarterback. So, I mean, they have a lot of holes to fill. Carnell Tate, Malik Neighbors coming back. Carnell Tate to the Giants at number 5. Malik Neighbors coming back from an ACL. How is he going to come back? But to have 2 heavy-hitting wide receivers on your team, I think would obviously be a big plus. I like, and not just because he was Notre Dame, but he's the best running back in the draft. It was interesting with the Chiefs. Had Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco. Both had some injury issues. Jeremiyah Love, and remember, Mel Kiper had been for years never take a running back in the first round, never take a running back in the first round. Yet we have seen running backs in the first round, and Jeremiyah Love is, I think, going to be a star at the next level and is going to fit on any team he goes to.
So this was my question because, like you, I am a Jeremiyah lover. Big fan, think he's going to be an absolute menace at the next level. His pass catching ability, his receiving ability. Listen, I don't think anyone's Christian McCaffrey, but this guy is a legitimate slot receiver when you move him out and use that aspect of his game. That being said, the conversation around drafting running backs high, paying running backs high, I think has finally evolved to a place where we can ask the question, is this Chiefs offense ready to receive a running back and do right by it? Do you trust this Chiefs offensive line that we saw last year that had a lot of questions asked of it yet again, coming off the Super Bowl from 2 years ago and now through this season, to be a group that can go out here and do the things that you need to do as an offense to make a running back drafted in the top 10 as successful as he'd need to be to justify the pick?
Well, that's still a question to be answered, but you're right. Obviously, that offensive line has definitely struggled. They like to pass if their wide receivers are healthy or not suspended. We don't know what Travis Kelce is going to do. He's the security blanket for Patrick Mahomes, but also a great running back can make an offense better. Right? I mean, a lot of times we talk about running backs when they hit a hole, but there's a big hole there, and that's a reason by the offensive line. Other times, running backs have to make their own hole, and their own space. Jeremiyah loves jump cut. Jeremiyah loves spin moves. I mean, his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield, which is something he improved upon. So I think he can help that offense improve.
He can, but at the same time, like, we just went through a lot of this last year with the Raiders situation at running back, right? Like,
yes.
At some point, I'm not saying the Chiefs situation is anywhere near as bad as Las Vegas by any stretch of the imagination. I just wonder if the Chiefs, who I think still have questions they need to answer about wide receiver and their approach to that position, and if a guy like Jordan Tyson falls down to them, who is instant open and can do everything, I'm a little fascinated by. Like, Jeremiyah Love is a first-round running back, full stop. But I think for his sake and the team's sake, I want this to be a team that is much further along in where it is building its offensive line than maybe where Kansas City is right now. Maybe Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes are still enough to go make that right on the other side. And listen, drafting Jeremiyah Love is going to be a good decision for whoever makes it. I had certain questions about that. Can I tell you the biggest question and worry that I had in this draft picture, though, as Mel Kiper laid it out? Arvell Reese, you mentioned, fits a need on defense for the Jets, who are still trying to adjust to Aaron Glenn's world and reality there. At number 16 overall, Mel Kiper Jr. has his second and only other quarterback going in the first round in Ty Simpson to the New York Jets. I worry greatly about that fit for both parties involved. Ty Simpson, as we mentioned, only 15 career starts, was a guy that had a projected first-round grade and came out in a thin class to take advantage of that. And we said the best version of events here would be Ty Simpson falling enough, teams having enough restraint for him to make his way to the back end of the first round, maybe a pick in the 20s, to a team that doesn't necessarily need a quarterback right now. Think the Rams, who might be planning for life after Matthew Stafford, if and when that comes. But going to a Jets team that would likely need him to play now and do well now for a regime in Aaron Glenn that took a huge bath in year number one seems like disaster scenario number one for the development of a quarterback in Ty Simpson's position.
Could not agree more. Again, 15 starts. I know he gave all the reasons for coming out, and obviously it's his decision. And initially he was looked at the back end of the first round. But now with Dante Moore Dante Moore was scheduled to be number 2 to the Jets. So now the Jets could be like, we could get our quarterback in the middle of the first round and get a great defensive player with number 2. But I'm with you. That team needs so much help. I completely agree that normally a high pick like a Mendoza, if he goes to the Vegas Raiders, put him in right away. He is your opening day starter and go with it. Ty Simpson, man, just 15 starts. I've questioned this for weeks now, and I will continue to, unless they have somebody else, and I don't think it's anybody on the roster, somebody else that they bring in to bridge to Ty Simpson. I do not think he should be playing right away.
I certainly don't think he or any rookie should be playing right away for the Jets, and especially someone in his position. So that seems toxic and not something that I want for a guy that seems like a nice dude. Can I tell you what did excite me for a team in a franchise that is often under a lot of scrutiny? If it were to break this way for the Dallas Cowboys, be doing backflips. Sonny Styles at 12 and Akeem Mesidor at 20, addressing defense, which is the overwhelming need for this team, and doing it in the middle. We know that this Dallas Cowboys team had a nightmarish time trying to stop the run. You trade for Quinnen Williams at the deadline. I know they've been excited about DeMarvion Overshawn at linebacker, but to pair him with Sonny Styles in the middle to help with some of that run stuff. And then Akeem Mesidor, who all he did was have 12 and a half sacks opposite Ruben Bain. And I get it. Having both those guys in a bookend is going to give them opportunities to eat. Go turn on the tape and show me the time an offensive lineman was able to successfully stay in front of Akeem Mesidor for multiple plays in a row. It was borderline impossible. Like, Ruben Bain is the hammer, but in terms of developed high-end rushing ability and just that almost like a Kyle Van Noy-esque ability to where I don't feel like anyone's ever landed a clean blow on Kyle Van Noy late in his years, the same is kind of true for Akeem Mesidor. This, to me, would be a coup for the Dallas Cowboys on defense in the first round.
I agree, up the spine where they need help. And they got help in the trade, obviously, right, with Quinnen Williams and Kenny Clark, two separate trades. But, yeah, I completely agree with that as a fit. Another good fit I see is at 14, the Ravens taking Mekhi Lemon, the wide receiver out of USC, giving Lamar Jackson another weapon outside of Zay Flowers. I think they needed more help at the wide receiver position. Lemon had over 1,100 yards and I think 11 touchdowns this year. So I think that's another good fit.
Yeah, the wide receiver class, fascinating between Carnell Tate, Jordan Tyson, and Mekhi Lemon. All different receivers. My favorite flavor of the bunch is Jordan Tyson. I think when healthy, he is one of the most spectacular receivers I've watched in college football over the last couple of years. Fascinated to see where he ends up. Maybe any number of these names could be ones to consider for the Pittsburgh Steelers. This was interesting here. Ben Roethlisberger on his podcast Football and came out and had this to say about the Pittsburgh Steelers and the decision they have to make and the advice he'd give them about addressing the quarterback position, saying, I wouldn't draft a quarterback for at least 2 or 3 years. That's just my opinion. The issue I see with a lot of teams, they get a quarterback and try and build around him. I think it should be the other way around. You build your team and you put your quarterback in it. In general, Dad, where are you at on this as a piece of advice? Because I think overall, this is ideal for almost anyone, right? This idea that, yes, you would like a more fully formed roster for your young quarterback to come into.
Yeah, you'd love that, but that's really not the way it works. I mean, now it's draft a quarterback high, insert him in there, and then while he's a rookie under a rookie wage scale or the rookie money, which isn't big quarterback money, then you have the money to build the rest of your team out. Because if you spend a lot of money to build your team out and then get a quarterback, what if the quarterback doesn't work, right? Now you're hunting down a quarterback after a couple of years. Certainly there's the issue if you draft one and try and build your team around him and he doesn't work. But now you've started to build your team around a rookie quarterback or a second-year quarterback. You have more room to do that. In theory, what he's saying, I agree with, but in practical application, the worst teams in the league that have the ability to draft the quote-unquote best quarterbacks are going to draft them so they have them. So they have the potential franchise quarterback like a Mendoza. We've got him. Okay. Now, is he going to a great team around him outside of Brock Bowers and Max Crosby? No, but you're not going to pass up on Mendoza to build up the roster and then hope in 2 to 3 years there's a really good quarterback. Now, a lot of it depends on your grade, right? If you have a franchise grade on a quarterback, you're going to take him. If you don't, then I completely agree with Ben. Don't overreach.
Well, but let's zoom in on the lens of the team he's talking about in the Pittsburgh Steelers. What have they been doing for the last number of years but doing this? Like, I'm not going to mansplain the Steelers roster to a guy that wore the uniform and played at a high level, but it's not like this team has been in range of picking one of the good quarterbacks for quite some time now. Kenny Pickett was the last first-round pick, and we know how that went. And so all this has been is a series of building up the roster. They picked 21st this year. Like, if Ty Simpson fell down to 21, maybe you'd have an interesting decision there, although I still question where you'd be going with the new regime coming in there. But if you look at what Ben's talking about, which falls into the Shaquille O'Neal analysis of just do the things that worked for me and you'll be fine despite not having my skill set. Like, yes, Ben came in a situation like this that helped his development. Awesome. But if you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, their top three offensive line picks their three offensive line draft picks from 2024 and Troy Fautanu, McCormick, and Frazier led the team in snaps this season. So you've got an offensive line that's young and trending in the right direction. You signed DK Metcalf to a free agent deal last offseason. Kenneth Gainwell, you've got a decision to make at running back. He signed that 1-year prove-it deal, but balled out. Like, you look at that backfield with him and Jaylen Warren. Feel pretty good about where that's going. You got a million tight ends in the closet thanks to Arthur Smith's tenure there. And even on defense, while you're a little longer in the tooth with guys like Jalen Ramsey and TJ Watt and Cam Hayward, like, you look at the edges, Nick Herbig and Alex Highsmith. You drafted Jack Sawyer and Yahya Black. Derek Harmon was your first-round pick. Joey Porter Jr. has played well at times. So, like, you've been trying to do this. Defensively, there may be still room to go. But if you're looking at trying to build up an offense around a young quarterback, sure, maybe go grab another receiver to try and supplement that group, but how much more can you wait and do for that group before you do plop the quarterback down into it and try this out?
And they tried with the quarterback and they've missed, and there's no quarterback to grab now in the first round, right? At 21, because I still wouldn't grab Ty Simpson if he were at 21. So there's really no quarterback to get in this class. So are they going to bring Aaron Rodgers back, right? Or is it going to be Mason Rudolph? I think it's going to be one of those two that's going to have to carry on until they find another supposed franchise quarterback.
See, what you just mentioned there, like, I understand, hey, maybe you've got a hesitance to draft Ty Simpson, but that could be a situation where, hey, if you bring Aaron Rodgers back one more time and you say, hey, it's contingent on you being the good soldier and helping us get this young guy ready in the swan song of your career, that could be a situation that actually feels like it's got potential, that's actually thought out the right way because of the strategy that Ben Roethlisberger mentioned. So I think the Steelers are a fascinating team, as we know, for a million reasons. Mike Tomlin not being there for the first time in the life of a voting age kid is one of them. But I also do think at some point, this is what the Steelers have been waiting around and doing for a while at the quarterback position. And at some point, they're going to have to get off the pot. We can get to that more as we get closer and closer to draft season. But coming up next, we talked about trouble in paradise for one NBA team. It might pale in comparison to what's going on in New York. We'll take you inside the players-only meeting for the Knicks next on Golic and Golic. Golic and Golic. Big one coming up tomorrow. We got the NFC Championship this weekend. Rashid Shaheed going to tell us what it's been like getting prepped for the Seattle Seahawks, the 1-seed dominant last weekend in the division against the 49ers. And now they once again get to lock horns, pun intended, with the Rams. Don't miss it tomorrow, 3:30 to 5:30 p.m. Eastern, right here on Golic and Golic. Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. welcoming you guys back in here now. Dad, how many players-only meetings were you involved in during your time with the Philadelphia Eagles? What did that look like for your group?
Well, there was probably a handful with the Houston Oilers as well, because we didn't have very good seasons there as well. And I can't remember if we had one in Miami, because we were 9-2 at one point in the year, and we lost our remaining 5 games and didn't make the playoffs. And maybe in there we may have had one as well. They're well intentioned, but rarely do they become fruitful.
Yeah, it's usually the leaders of the team getting up in front of the class without the coaches saying, hey, we got to fix this on our own. We got to take accountability. Things that everybody usually already knows, things that make you feel like you're doing all that you can, and maybe just a different way to hear the same message coach has been preaching. I ask because the New York Knicks have now reached that point in their season and their midseason slide where Jalen Brunson reportedly had to call a players-only meeting after the Knicks got blown out by the Mavericks on Martin Luther King Day. Sources told ESPN it was their 9th loss in 11 games. The Knicks looking for answers both defensively and offensively. Remember, they started 23-9. They won the NBA Cup. Now they're 25-18, and their offense has been bottom 5 in the NBA in January. What's plagued the Knicks, Dad? And is it something that they can fix without going to the well at the trade deadline? I know a lot of people still want to see if the Giannis Antetokounmpo to New York thing can happen at some point. Based off everything I've read and the potential trade packages on the table, I don't think there's a single thing the Knicks could offer the Bucks realistically to pry Giannis out of there during the season. So are they just going to have to figure this out on their own?
Oh, I think so. And, you have Brunson saying either we do it, we care enough to do it, or we don't. You have Josh Hart saying there needs to be some soul searching. He said, obviously, they're not executing offensively. Defensively, used the word abysmal. Said we have been terrible defensively all year. But they were 23-9. So, and again, we talk about how deep is the East. They dropped to third. Boston's now second, but still, obviously, no Jason Tatum. Boston may be overachieving this year, though Jalen Brown is obviously an all-star. And Toronto is right there as well. They're 7 games out of first, but they're only a game and a half out of dropping out of the automatic top 6, right? They're a game and a half away from Cleveland in the 7 slot. So I think they're going to have to do it with what they have. And they talk in that meeting about it has to come from this room, not the coaches. So again, and it was the same way in football. Now in football, there's a larger group of people, right, who are talking in a team meeting, but still it's basically the leaders. Basically it's the top end players, a handful at most in a football locker room, probably even less than that in a basketball locker room of who is speaking up. So as I said, it just, you kind of air some things out. I don't, and I'm not in every one of them. Maybe some serve well, but I think for the most part, it's just kind of an airing of the grievances, and then you kind of move on.
I think this is a situation where, for me, this always felt like something that was kind of inevitable given the change that they went through, right? We talked glowingly about Mike Brown using more of the bench at the beginning of the season.
Right.
We know injury's been a part of this, and they've had a bunch of their guys from Brunson with a couple of rolled ankles here. Josh Hart was in and out of the lineup with a sprained ankle. Mitchell Robinson, Miles McBride. Like, they've had important players, especially Mitchell Robinson. I mean, with Karl Anthony Towns as your other big on this team, defense is not going to be the priority when he's on the court. And so with all that volatility and the newness of this hitting the midseason lull, I'm not surprised. This is, to me, a bad math problem for the Knicks that can be solved by, towards the end of the season, even with the expanded roster, getting the ball in Jalen Brunson's hands a bunch, him being healthy, and this core of the roster being healthy around him.
And let me tell you, if a team-only meeting goes longer than 20 minutes or so, you're wasting your time after that. Then everybody's just repeating themselves.
I mean, especially in this day and age with Gen Z players making their way in a lot of these meetings, you're just going to have like a 20-minute meeting officially anyway. It's not going to do anyone any good. Someone's going to turn on their phone and the rest will be history. Coming up next, Mike McDaniel turned on his phone and picked up for one team and hung up on another. We'll tell you who that was next on Golic Golic. Welcome back. Put your twos up. And for those of you that base your entire calendar week in being off Golic Golic, which great business, why wouldn't you? You're now officially halfway through the work week. Mazel tov. We love that for you. Plenty more still coming up. Bill Barnwell going to come and talk about some of the recent NFL coaching hires and look ahead to conference championship weekend. Jeff Passan going to help us break down the big news about Cody Bellinger and the New York Yankees in just a little bit. But first, let's get you caught up on what you've missed in our 3-point stance. And surprise, surprise, Lane Kiffin still killing it in the portal. Ole Miss star edge rusher, a late entrant in the portal, now set to join the Tigers in 2026. Uman Mielen, who's a breakout star for Ole Miss this past season with Lane Kiffin, 45 tackles and 9 sacks, immediately became one of the best edge rushers when he entered into the portal. Remember, Prince Will's brother, Prince Lee, was a star for Lane Kiffin back in the day at Ole Miss as well, now thriving in the NFL. Speaking of thriving, the Falcons are hiring Tommy Reese as their offensive coordinator per Ian Rappaport. Reese joined the Browns 2 seasons ago as the tight end coach after multiple stops as a coordinator in college. He was then elevated to offensive coordinator going into 2025, where he then took over play calling duties in November as the Browns season began to wobble just a bit, following Kevin Stefanski to his new stop in ATL. Enjoy Magic City, Tommy. We appreciate you, buddy. The Chargers, meanwhile, are expected to hire former Dolphins coach Mike McDaniel as the team's new offensive coordinator. Sources told Adam Schefter and Jeff Darlington on Tuesday night. The Bucs and the Eagles had also pursued him for their top coordinator target, while Harbaugh had been looking for a new coordinator since firing Greg Roman last Tuesday after the team's wild card loss to the Patriots. Diana Rossini had also reported that McDaniel had actually taken his name out of the Browns head coaching job in the days leading up to this. So how tough a look is this for Cleveland, by the way? You're interviewing this guy to be your head coach. I think they were scheduled to have another meeting coming up for that. And he tells you, no, I would rather go hang out and be the coordinator out in California.
Yeah, listen, the Browns are a mess, right? Obviously, except for their defense. Their defense is in great shape. Offensively, is Shedeur Sanders going to be the guy? He's still developing. That offense certainly needs a lot of work. And going to the Chargers had a top 5 defense. You know, the offensive line was battered with injuries. If they get them healthy, you have Justin Herbert, who you're going to coach. Now, what's interesting to me is, was McDaniel not up for the Baltimore or Pittsburgh job, especially, or the Buffalo job? Because Buffalo and Baltimore head coaching job would certainly be better than the Chargers offensive coordinator job. I wonder where McDaniel was in the head coaching cycle with 6 jobs left open.
Yeah, and that's the one thing we'll never know. Like, even relative to the Browns, we don't know if he was going to be the one that they hired, and being able to say, you know, you can't fire me, I quit, and the job process looks good for him and all of this. But I do think this, as much as anything, maybe it's not as much egg on the Browns' face as we want it to be, even though, like you said, of course they weren't going to be the appealing ones. And I don't know if Mike McDaniel, fresh off being fired, like he wasn't one of the guys like Rob Saleh who took the year off to go back and be a coordinator before jumping back into the head coaching space. That would have been a little tougher sell, I think, for a team like Baltimore looking to take the next step, or a team like Buffalo looking to take that next step where it's we need to win the Super Bowl, not we need to get back to the playoffs. This is a great win, though, for the Chargers and for Mike McDaniel, quite honestly. Getting to go from Miami, where he was in charge of revitalizing Tua Tagovailoa, who we know, while oft was compared to Justin Herbert during the early portion of his careers, I don't think ever really warranted that in terms of the skill sets. We're now unequivocally, say what you want about Justin Herbert's high-end production, there are a few quarterbacks walking this earth with the kind of physical skill sets and early career production, despite the lack of protection at times that Herbo has. So, big win for him. How do you think this fits with Harbaugh, Dad, especially in a cycle where they might lose Jesse Minter on the other side defensively? These two personalities in the same room.
I can't wait to hear any press conference with these two guys in the same room. That's what I'm waiting for. Two of the quirkiest coaches that you're going to have in the NFL. No doubt about that. But I think this is a big-time home run for the Chargers. Yes, if they lose Jesse Minter, it'll be interesting to keep cohesiveness of, again, a top 5 overall defense in the regular season for the Chargers. If they were to hire from within to keep the same, X's and O's, right? And keep the consistency there. That will be interesting to me.
I mean, we do know one thing. While they may have their different quirks, Mike McDaniel speaks Jim Harbaugh's love language, right?
Yes.
The sell on him has always been, going back to his days with the 49ers, creative run design. And that was Greg Roman's big sell, too. Like, for all the flaws that we've picked out with Greg Roman in the last 2 tenures with the Harbaugh brothers, he's always been someone who was one of the game's most innovative run designers. But unfortunately, the second half adjustments and the passing game stuff ultimately fell short. And so that's still going to be the big test. Like, this is, I think, a win in terms of looking for a coordinator that can hopefully help you take that next step. But the key is going to be, can this offensive line for once stay healthy? And that's still the thing in my lifetime. Like, I hate going to health as a default bit of analysis, but I think for the Chargers it's kind of appropriate because my entire adult lifetime has been this team as a walking house of horrors when it comes to keeping their starting O-line on the field. Yeah, it is. And listen, that's nothing you can predict, right? I mean, they have pieces and they get hurt. It's like the 49ers the last couple of years. They've had the great pieces. One year it really cost them. This year they made it to the second round of the playoffs before they got smoked by Seattle. But it's just one thing. You can set up the chess pieces however you want, but all of a sudden if the chess pieces start to get broken, there's not a whole lot you can do about it, right? And it's not like you can have great depth on a 53-man roster. You can only pay so much, and most of that money is going to your starters. So it gets interesting real quick. I will never call offensive linemen pawns, even if the roles are somewhat similar. They need to be at least 3 times that size on the board to make that happen. For more analysis on this and the rest of the NFL offseason and coming championship weekend, let's welcome in our buddy Bill Barnwell, the Bill Barnwell Show, wherever you get your podcast, doing a great job over at ESPN. And Bill, the Mike McDaniel hire, how do you like that fit with him, Justin Herbert, and what we know the pieces are of this Chargers offense?
Before we get started, guys, have you guys checked in to see if there's an electric substation near the Chargers practice facility?
Great point.
Are we worried about maybe some electric? No, that's ridiculous. I do like the fit, Gojo, for the reasons you mentioned. The great run game. Remember when Jim Harbaugh came to Los Angeles and Greg Roman came with him, his longtime OC, the argument was, hey, imagine what Justin Herbert would look like with a run game. He never had that run game during their time there. They were 28th in the NFL in success rate on designed runs. And so you're hoping that you build that run game in and you take some of the pressure off of Justin Herbert. Obviously, that team compromised by the tackle injuries, but if you have a run game, well, you don't have to drop back as often and put your tackles in pass blocking situations. You don't have to rely as heavily on Justin Herbert scrambling, and he's been hit more than any quarterback in football over the last couple of seasons. And so that is the thing I think you're really hoping for with McDaniel is just, can you make life easier for Justin Herbert? Because you can't control the injuries, but you can control how effective you are at running the football, and that's been a weakness for the Chargers, even with Greg Roman, an excellent designer of run plays himself, in the building over the past couple of seasons.
Well, we know McDaniel turned down another interview with the Browns. Are we to believe that he wasn't a candidate for Buffalo or Baltimore, which would have been really, really good rosters to take over?
Certainly seems like it, and obviously getting an interview is maybe different from getting an opportunity. I think, there's always that little sort of like behind the scenes maneuvering, those conversations teams have with agents. Hey, is my guy seriously getting this opportunity? And we also don't know what the Chargers time frame is. They might have said, hey, we don't want to sit around waiting for someone to take this job. This is a really exciting opportunity. LA, Justin Herbert, Jim Harbaugh, playoff team the past couple of years. This is your chance. Take it or leave it. And Mike McDaniel might have said, hey, I'd rather have this job I feel good about for sure as an OC versus a job I don't know if I feel great about. Potentially, as a head coach, I might not even get that job offered to me. And so I could see a scenario where this was, the opportunity you have now is better than a chance of having an opportunity in Buffalo or in Baltimore later on, even if obviously those would have been great opportunities to land as a head coach if he got that opportunity.
McDaniel can certainly keep the same wardrobe and aura going from Miami to Los Angeles, so that's a big win for him aesthetically. Speaking of the Bills' job, Bill, how appealing is it at this point, knowing what we know about the roster, certainly the appeal of Josh Allen, and especially in light of the Terry Pegula-led press conference from today where he threw Sean McDermott firmly under that bus?
It was really a challenge to see if he could throw Sean McDermott and Keon Coleman further under the bus. And, you don't see a tossing competition, world's strongest man style, this early in the offseason typically. But that's where we ended up. And the pro is obviously Josh Allen. But I would also say the thing you guys have to really consider are the expectations. And for an organization, for the Bills, they've been to the AFC Championship game a bunch of times. They have been to the playoffs every year. They are a perennial favorite to win the division. Obviously, they didn't do it this year, but were on a streak before this. The expectation for that job is so high. You're going to have to step in a locker room that, by all accounts, still really liked Sean McDermott, still really felt like he was the guy. You're going to have to hope you do as good of a job coaching up the defense as McDermott did this past season. You're going to have to hope you can get more out of the offense when we frankly don't know if Brandon Beane is going to be delivering many playmakers or receivers to that offense. This isn't like something he wants to invest in on a significant level. And none of that strikes me as a fun opportunity to get into relative to some of the other opportunities out there. I mean, a team like the Steelers, the Ravens, yes, they have their flaws. Yes, they're not perfect, but they have a track record of giving you a significant time. And they know, like, they're not a player away or a spot away. The Ravens make it to the second round of the postseason next year, you're going to feel like you did a good job. If you're the Bills coach and you make it to the divisional round and lose, you're going to look over your shoulder and be worried you're going to get replaced again. So it does feel like it's really just Josh Allen making that job appealing versus some of the other factors we're seeing in other buildings around the NFL.
So if we're right now, the four coaches that have gotten jobs are all have head coaching experience. Hafley's in college, but still head coaching. If there is going to be at least one first-time head coach from coordinator position, do you think it'll be Rams defense coordinator Chris Shula, Seattle's offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak, or the Chargers D coordinator, Jesse Minter?
I do feel like Minter should be the favorite. I mean, you have his own players begging him on social media to come back, which should tell you how well respected he is. But the reality in the NFL, we know this, guys. It's like teams always want an offensive coach. If it's a good offensive coach and an equally good defensive coach, 9 times out of 10, the offensive coach is the one getting hired. So I think Minter is, frankly, the better coach than Kubiak. But I would say Kubiak is the better or the more likely candidate to get that first-time job. And the other name I'll throw out there, I want to mention this name as well, just as a long shot, but a name that I keep seeing pop up, and I think he's going to be maybe getting a head coaching job quicker than people expect, is Nate Schilhaas, the passing game coordinator, I believe, in Los Angeles under Sean McVay. That opportunity has led to so many head coaching jobs for guys like Liam Cohen, Zach Taylor, Kevin O'Connell in the past was the OC there with the Rams. And you are going to see teams want to get their own Sean McVay. We've known that for almost a decade now in the NFL. And so Kubiak's going to have his opportunities. I think he'll be a head coach next season, but I wouldn't be shocked at all if Schilhaas ended up in one of those jobs as kind of the, the Sean McVay starter kit.
Yeah, the touched by Sean McVay starter kit that every NFL coaching offseason is required to satisfy. Speaking of those Rams, let's go ahead a little bit to Conference Championship weekend coming up. What did you make of Matthew Stafford's performance on the road? We know a cold environment, nursing that finger injury. Mm-hmm. And does it give you any pause as they go for their third time seeing the Seattle Seahawks defense?
It does. And I'll tell you why. This is not a one-week thing to me. They've had stretches really over the last few games, going back to that second Seahawks game where they did not score at all for a long stretch in the fourth quarter. They go 5 drives in the fourth quarter without scoring. The Panthers game, they were really struggling to move the ball for a chunk of that game. And the Bears game, when they score early, they don't really score for a long stretch of time, and then they do pull out an incredible late drive with that spectacular pass to the sideline to Devontae Adams. It's not like I'm saying Matthew Stafford can't do it, because he can, and they were great first 2.5, 3 quarters against the Seahawks last time out. But this offense is going stretches where they struggle to move the football. They are going quarters, even halves of time without really consistently moving the ball. And there's been little things here and there. It's not just one thing. They've gotten away from the 13 personnel, the 3 tight end groupings that they were having success with earlier in the year. I still think Devontae Adams is not 100%. He has not looked his usual self in the postseason. They have not run the ball as consistently. They've leaned away from running the football almost at times. So I just sort of feel like they're not in rhythm in the way that maybe you would hope heading into the postseason. And so I don't have an issue with Matthew Stafford. Don't have an issue with Sean McVay. I just sort of feel like I'd like to see them have more counter punches ready versus what they're seeing. Because the Bears, not a great defense by any means on the numbers, locked them up for a good chunk of that game with those slot blitzes, playing nickel, playing dime, and sort of scaring them into throwing the football into spots the Bears were very happy to go and tackle and make plays.
Speaking of rhythm, how about the rhythm of the quarterback in Denver who hasn't thrown a pass since 2023, Jarrett Stidham? What's the expectation there?
The expectation is Sean Payton Hall of Fame game plan. If they win this game, straight to Canton for that playbook. It's going to be... it's going to be interesting. This is a guy who they went out and prioritized the first moment Sean Payton got there. That was one of their first signings, was we want Jarrett Stidham to be in the building before they drafted Bo Nix. And that's a guy they really believe in. He's played well at times late in the year. But there's an element to the Broncos playbook that I don't think he's going to be able to handle. And that's all the boots, all the nakeds, all the quarterback run game stuff. You can't expect him to be doing that as often and as effectively and as consistently as Bo Nix did. That was really this core of what Bo Nix did in that offense. And so I do believe you're going to have maybe a little bit better of a drop back passer, which I think is a positive, but Sean Payton is so good at building stuff and taking advantage of the opposing team's weakness. You go back to last week in that Bills game, there were Bills players who were on the field for literally one defensive snap. And Sean Payton went after that guy and got a touchdown pass. That happened twice in that game with Darnell Savage and Dane Jackson. So if there's an opportunity to be made, Sean Payton is going to find it. I just think they're going to have to run the ball a little more effectively. It's something they haven't done well this year. Maybe they get J.K. Dobbins back, although I'm a little skeptical. But it has to be more of a holistic, kind of big picture, not putting too much on the quarterback game plan, and you just can't rely on his legs as much as you can rely on Bo Nix's legs.
Which is a shame considering Bo Nix's legs hugely potent for that team, especially in that win that we saw last weekend. Always great stuff. Check out the Bill Barnwell Show wherever you get your podcast. Check him out over on ESPN. Bill, always appreciate it, man. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Bill.
All right, coming up next from one of our former teammates to another, we'll look ahead to Jeff Passan coming up and the potential inevitability of 18 games in the NFL. It's Golic and Golic. Time for everyone's favorite offseason topic, labor peace in our time. Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. The NFL always inching towards continuing to add inventory to one of the most successful products in all of sports. This time, we get a little window into this from one of the chief decision makers on the ownership side. Robert Kraft, a longtime owner of the New England Patriots, went on his appearance on the radio station 98.5, the Sports Hub, and talked about the push that ownership wants to make, saying they want to make international exposure more important to them. Every team will go to 18 games with 2 exhibition and eliminate one of the preseason games. Every team will play 1 game overseas, and part of the reason is so we can continue to grow the cap and keep our labor happy, because we're sort of getting near the top here, in domestic cover. Dad, as someone who was a part of the labor in a prior life, how would you think the group would feel about this and their characterization by Robert Kraft?
Listen, there are players that think it's a partnership with the owners, and the owners, there's no way they think it's a partnership with the players. The owners have deeper pockets. The owners have more money. The owners control mostly everything, especially in football, because players tend to, and I have personal experience in this, lose strikes. So, yeah, he just said the part out loud, right? Kind of like Terry Pegula did in throwing Sean McDermott under the bus. Normally it's like, hey, thanks for the memories and go on. But he decided to torch Sean McDermott. And basically Kraft is saying what every owner thinks. Yes, they're labor. They work for us and we pay them for their work.
I'm sure that's going to sting for the players, especially because, remember, the NFLPA pushed back on this pretty recently. David White, the executive director, or interim director for the union, said about the 18th game, we haven't talked much about it yet, and it is certainly not inevitable and should not be presented as such.
Mike, the players are not going to strike over an 18th game. Players in the NFL don't have a great track record with striking. They don't have a great record with 1,800 people staying together when some are making $60 million and others are making $750,000 and everything in between. I wish it were better, because I am obviously always on the player's side. But again, through personal experience and seeing the pay scale, while it's gone up for the bottom end, the pay scale widen even more for the haves. I don't even want to call them have-nots when you're making $750 to $1 million. You're not have-nots, just the lesser haves, the haves and the lesser haves. They're not going to strike over this. I don't think they'll have a choice as far as playing international games. But, as far as negotiating an 18th game, the best they can do is negotiate something that you want. And that's another thing the union sometimes has trouble, or the players agreeing on, is what do we want to get back for an 18th game? Because at the end of the day, to Robert Kraft's point, if there is more revenue, the cap will go up and the player salaries will go up because of the revenue split. That is all true, but it is definitely more wear and tear on your body from the 18th game to the travel internationally. But me personally, I don't think there's any way the players pick the 18th game. We don't want it, and we're not going to work if you owners want it. I don't think it goes to that route.
I just wonder at what point the breaking point comes. Like, you can oversaturate any market. It's why the owners are doing this, right? Ironic that the greed is inspired by what they see from the English Premier League, whose movement to form that league was based on the greed they had in watching what the NFL had as a monopoly over the talent in the United States. Again, go read The Club. It's a phenomenal book. And they've maxed out this market, and they feel like they want to go, as Robert Kraft put it, build an international team in the aggregate by having everyone play over there. But on the other side, when you look anecdotally, we don't have enough data to research it yet, but 2020, we made the move to an extra wild card team in each round. 2021, we made the move to a 17-game regular season. And since then, doesn't it feel like every season we walk into the end of the year with even more star players hurt, with more teams pointed towards the draft like the NBA trying to tank for picks? That does not seem good for business long term in terms of the players that we see injured late when we are adding more to their body without adding more active guys to the game day rosters late in the season and things like that.
So will it ever have, with those players getting hurt, which Robert Kraft calls labor, will those players getting hurt cost the owners money? That's the question. Will it take money out of the owner's pocket, or with international games, with media rights, are the owners going to get all their money anyway? So in essence, if a player gets hurt, they're like, okay, that's collateral damage that we can live with the money that we're putting in our pockets. So I'm just, strictly from a business standpoint, going 18 games, though, they better damn well go to 2 bye weeks. That's for sure.
Yeah, since the league went to 17 games in the season, this last season, 593 players put on IR, the second highest total, ironically, since the first year when 632 went on IR. So something to keep an eye on here as we continue to collect data about what's going on with this in the march towards the 18th game. We march towards more great opportunities for you here at FanDuel Sports Network. NBA and NHL fans, if you have to miss a game for whatever reason, fear not. We get the game replays on the FanDuel Sports Network app. Right after the game ends, you can watch every highlight or big moment, all in your choice of a 5, 10, if you got time, even a 15-minute condensed replay. Just download the FanDuel Sports Network app today and go check that out and prosper so you never have to miss out on the action. Speaking of action, it was live action in the Bronx today. We'll talk to the man who broke the news and Jeff Passan next on Golic Golic. It's Golic Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., we've seen plenty of big money coming out of Major League Baseball this offseason here for some incredibly well-priced bats. And yet another one came off the board here today. Good news for Yankees fans, as it was announced and reported that Cody Bellinger signed a 5-year, $162.5 million contract. Sources told ESPN's Jeff Passan. Ends a standoff between the two sides this offseason here. It includes opt-outs after the second and third seasons, $20 million in a signing bonus, and a full no-trade clause. So, speaking to the man who helped break the news here, let's bring him in here right now. ESPN MLB Insider Jeff Passan, kind enough to join us here, coming off this good news in the Bronx. Jeff, how you doing, man? Good to see you.
Gentlemen, great to be with you. How are you guys?
Doing well.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I'm sure not as good as Yankees fans today. So, Jeff, walk us through the timeline for this. I know in reporting you said this is something both sides ultimately wanted to do. How much was this interview influenced, I should say, by the market for some of these other guys, namely Kyle Tucker, who we knew was going to be the biggest name moved this offseason?
Yeah, I think Kyle Tucker, but we also need to put Bo Bichette in that category as well. Because Bo Bichette, if you look at the first 2 years of Cody Bellinger's contract, the way that it's structured, he's paid $32.5 million in salary this year. He's paid $32.5 million in salary next year, and he's got a $20 million signing bonus. That adds up to $85 million in the first 2 years, which is right around the same average annual value that Bo Bichette got in his contract. So it just goes to show, like, markets are dynamic and they are fluid, and that if there is a contract that's an outlier or a seeming outlier like Kyle Tucker's was, then Bichette less than 24 hours later responds to that and gets a different deal than the expectation for him. And now you see a guy like Cody Bellinger, who's got the protection of the 5-year contract and of the $162.5 million if things don't go right, but he's also got the optionality, can opt out after the second season, can opt out after the third season. And at the end of the day, it's a very good deal for him, and one that brings an integral part of this Yankees team back to try and actually win the American League this year, in an American League East that day after day, guys, just gets more and more cutthroat.
So in the last week, we've had, the Red Sox, Rangers, Suarez, $130 million, Kyle Tucker, $240, Bo Bichette, $126, Bellinger, $162. When and if and when is the rubber going to meet the road between owners and players and contracts?
In what respect? Because I could spend the next 2 hours talking about this. So are you offended by the size of the contracts?
Oh, no.
Are you bothered?
I love the players getting all they can, but I know owners can be offended by the size of the contracts.
They are offended, and yet they're still giving them out. And that's the really interesting part of where this market is right now. You've got Major League Baseball and its owners signaling that they're going to pursue a salary cap once the collective bargaining agreement expires on December 1st. On the other hand, while you have these owners crying poor and saying that, baseball is a break-even business, they're going out and giving these mega deals to player after player after player and changing the paradigm of what contracts look like. We saw it last year with Juan Soto getting 15 years and $60 million. And we're seeing it again this winter in Kyle Tucker going out and beating his $51 million average annual value by a significant margin. It's not a full $60 million a year on the 4 years and $240 million because of deferred money, but it's valued at $57.1 million. And the most interesting part of this to me, guys, is that the $57.1 million to another team is $57.1 million. The $57.1 million to the Dodgers, who are already exceeding the highest threshold of the competitive balance tax or the luxury tax, need to pay 110% on every dollar spent over that. And so you have $57.1 million plus $57.1 million for another 100%, and then the 10% is $5.7 million. For 1 year of Kyle Tucker, the Los Angeles Dodgers are going to be paying $120 million. That is more than the current payrolls of 12 Major League Baseball teams. If that doesn't tell you where baseball's disparity is at right now, I don't know what does. And yet, I want to, if I can just turn this around and ask you guys a question, because you guys come from the football world. You played professionally. You played in college. You have lived, most of your life inside of a salary capped sport. And the one thing that I cannot get on board with and cannot oblige is the idea that definitively competitive balance is brought about by salary cap. That is the argument that Major League Baseball teams, owners, and the labor relations department that's going to be negotiating the new contract is making. That in order to have competitive balance, a salary cap is the best way to get that system. Is it? Do you guys think that's actually true? Is there any evidence that tells you that this is a causative relationship as opposed to one that's correlated, where, yeah, the NFL has great competitive balance, but is it specifically on account of the salary cap, or is it just a number of other factors you think in play?
Well, I think in the NFL you have teams that are just perennial losers, right? Like the Jets, like the Browns, the Titans as of late, the Raiders. But I think you have less of those in the NFL than you do in baseball, of kind of the really not haves and have-nots, because there is a salary cap. I go back and forth on this, quite honestly, Jeff. Mike, I don't know your feelings, but I understand keeping the number down, though the floor has to be a minimum height as well. But I probably would lean toward you saying, does it really give competitive balance? And I don't know that it does.
Jeff, I'd say this, college football to me is always an interesting comparative point with Major League Baseball because of the structure. And right now it is an uncapped league trying to figure out its financials the first time. And Indiana just won the national championship. I do think there is an element of that where, yes, while the spending maybe mimics the Premier League where you got to spend to actually get to that point, no, I think competitive balance is still in a lot of ways about the other things, about the ability to scout, the ability to bring people together, and ability to push all the right buttons regardless of the dollar amount you spend. So that's kind of where I agree with you on this. I guess let me put it to you like this then. If we were to throw out this idea that a salary cap is going to be part of Major League Baseball's future, what, if anything, could fans outside of Los Angeles have to look forward to about how this stops for the Dodgers, them being able to just continually load up on big price free agents that other people can't afford every offseason?
Part of the pursuit of the cap by Major League Baseball is the question of what would it look like? Would it be an NBA-style soft cap system? Would it be more like the NHL where, with long-term injury reserve and there's quite a bit of injuries in Major League Baseball, you can bring down your cap number? Or would it be like NFL where it's extremely hard capped? And beyond that, let's say just hypothetically here, and I don't know that this is anything like would be implemented or would be suggested by Major League Baseball in a proposal. But let's just say that the top end is $280 million and the bottom end is 140 or 260 and 130 or something like that. There's still $100 million gap between those lower end teams and those top end teams. What the Dodgers are doing right now, which by the way is well within their rights, both as an extraordinarily money team, but also one that does everything really, really well. Like, remember, the Angels had Shohei Ohtani for 6 years and didn't do squat with him, both on the field and off the field. The Dodgers bring him in, and suddenly are the first franchise in baseball history to clear $1 billion in revenue a year. So already the Dodgers have this enormous machine running. Are you telling me that $100 million gap theoretically between the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Los Angeles Dodgers is going to make Pirates fans feel any better? It's still $100 million. What everybody wants is parity. It's competitive balance. It's a feeling that this team that goes out there and brings in stars year after year, that wins the offseason, then wins the World Series, then wins the offseason, then wins the World Series, winning the offseason again this year with Tucker and Edwin Diaz, and who knows if they're going to go for the three-peat at this point. But it just feels like an inevitability to fans right now, and fans are extremely turned off by that. And frankly, I don't blame them. Like, I have been an advocate, guys, for the Dodgers doing what they do because I think they run an incredible business that is within the rules that were collectively bargained among 1,200 players and 30 owners. Now you're telling me 4 years later, those 30 owners didn't have the foresight to understand the consequences of the rules and what teams like the Dodgers were going to be capable and willing to do within them? That's on you. That's not on anyone else. That's on you, the stewards of this sport, to guide it in a direction that is fan-friendly and fan-first. And baseball right now, I think, is missing that element. It doesn't mean, though, that a cap is the answer. There are plenty of other ways that you can go out and try and make a little bit more competitive balance, whether it's through revenue sharing, whether it's through media money distribution. There are other solutions right now. And the idea that Major League Baseball is going to walk off the plank would be the most self-inflicted wound imaginable. Because I think, guys, that baseball right now, it's going through a good moment. Like, we're coming off a great World Series. I think there are a lot of new fans in play, either because of Shohei Ohtani, because of the pitch clock, whatever it is. Baseball has a chance to really capitalize on this. And if there was any lesson learned from 1994 when they lost the World Series, it's don't give people a reason not to watch your product, because they will.
And certainly a reason to watch it is the Hall of Fame inductions. We had a couple of players put in the Hall, Carlos Beltran and Andrew Jones. Where do these guys belong in the pantheon of great players in the history of the game?
Well, they're not Inner Circle Hall of Famers, but I do think it's really interesting that since 1980, when Duke Snider was elected by the baseball writers, they had chosen only 2 other center fielders, Kirby Puckett and Ken Griffey Jr., over the last 45 years. And there's been some consternation in recent years, understandably, about guys falling off the ballot a little bit too early, whether it was a Jim Edmonds or a Kenny Lofton, 2 guys who have borderline cases. And I don't vote for the Hall of Fame anymore. Andrew Jones probably would have been a no for me. I'm a small Hall guy. Like, I think it is the best of the best of the best. And their longevity is an important thing. And Andrew Jones had an unbelievable 10 years, but the combination of the on-base percentage and when he was in his 30s, I probably would have been a no there. I'm not mad that he got in. Like, he's one of the best defensive players in the game's history, and there's certainly something to be said for that. Carlos Beltran, to me, was, one of the 5 best all-around players of his generation. He had power, he had speed, he was clutch as can be in the postseason, played a premier position in center field. And so on one day, getting 2 center fielders in after getting 2 in over the last 45 years, only in baseball.
Truly incredible stuff there. While we're talking about a former Met, let's talk about the current Mets. They've obviously been busy. We talked about Bo Bichette trading for Luis Robert Jr. For a team that saw some names leave, that swung and missed on some early free agent guys. Is this a group now that can feel like they've done enough to prevent what happened last year from happening again?
I think they need another starting pitcher. And whether it's Framber Valdez, who's out there as a free agent right now and would cost only money in draft picks, or perhaps somebody on the trade market. I don't know if they're going to match up with Freddie Peralta, but there are opportunities there for the Mets to go out and get an arm. I like their lineup. I know it doesn't have Pete Alonso in it. It doesn't have Brandon Nimmo in it. Jeff McNeil's gone as well. And of course, Edwin Diaz went to the Dodgers. So those are four very familiar names. But when I look at the Mets guys, I see a team that in 2024 drastically overachieved and almost beat the Dodgers. Like they gave them a series there. And then last year, drastically underachieved. I thought they had the talent to go out and do more, and they wound up, they were 45-24 at one point. They wound up 83-79. Not great. And so sometimes if what you have isn't working, you need to make a really difficult decision. And I give the Mets, I give Steve Cohen and David Stearns credit for that. I think they understood that the group that they had there, they did not feel like they had a chance to win a World Series with. It just had not shown them enough. So change it up, bring in some new guys who have different skill sets. A guy like Bichette, bat to ball, he's going to have a high batting average, has power too, plays a premium position. Jorge Polanco, who's going to play first in DH, another guy, doesn't strike out very much. Another guy who's had clutch hits in the postseason. And Luis Robert, like after you bring in guys like that and Marcus Semien, whose defense is going to be just, I think, changing things big time for the Mets this year with Francisco Lindor up the middle. You go and bring in Luis Robert, you take a big swing. And it costs you a prospect in Luis Angel Acuna, who probably wasn't having a path to play anyway on the big league team. And it costs you $20 million this year. And there's a chance if you get the Luis Robert of 2 years ago, guy who hit 38 home runs and stole 20 bases and played great defense in center field, suddenly it's an all-star at a bargain price. So, look, Mets fans were disconsolate for weeks there after Alonso left, after Diaz left, after it felt like they were doing nothing. I think what they've done over the last, week or so since Bichette signed has put them in a pretty good position. And they're in a tough division too. The Phillies aren't going anywhere. The Braves are going to be better than they were last year. I think the Marlins are an ascendant team right now. So it's not going to be easy to make the playoffs. And when they do, just to get out of the National League, they're going to have to beat the Dodgers. But this is the kind of team that if I think it is a playoff team right now. And if they go out and get another starting pitcher, I think they have a real chance to win the National League East.
All right, some new faces in the pressure cooker that is that New York market for both teams trying to fight their way back to the promised land. Jeff, always great stuff. Always great catching up with you, man. Really appreciate the time. Enjoy the rest of the offseason. I'm sure we'll be knocking on your door again soon as baseball gets closer to pitchers and catchers.
I look forward to it, boys, and hopefully next time I will turn off that thing that makes the camera track me. Like, look at this. What's it doing? I don't understand how this works and don't like it. And I feel so freaking old. God, I thought I had gotten all my foibles out of the way. Turns out, no, my internet sucks too. Unbelievable.
You know what? The content is always A+. We can't control technology. Lord knows the two of us have no room to criticize on that front either. So Big Brother's tracking us all, and in this case, the camera tracking you. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Awesome stuff. The camera track always confuses me. I thank God none of my computers have gone that route.
I don't even, not going to lie, I don't even know what that is. So I have no idea. No clue. No clue.
I figured as much. You know what? I appreciate Jeff Passan out here fighting the good fight on behalf of the players, trying to make it abundantly clear that a cap's not going to fix all your problems. Major League Baseball's union has made a living fighting that for a long time. And I think he's right. While certainly you can point to some elements of the NFL and say a salary cap has always, to an extent, been one of the parts of the parity that the NFL has created, but also always been something that's there. It's hard for us to really know. I do think he's right in that some of these problems can be solved in ways that come short of all of a sudden putting a cap on a league that's enjoyed that freedom for a long time.
But, I mean, everybody sits there and talks about a salary cap. We put the graphic up before, and if we could throw it up again, the top 5 teams and I think the bottom 5 teams of payroll that they spend. Understand, a cap, you're going to have to spend a minimum. And these bottom 5 teams are going to have to spend more money. Right now, they're spending less money to try and make more of a profit. They keep their payroll down. They're going to have to increase their profits, while the top teams will have to drop theirs, or they'll have to increase their payroll. While the top teams, you're going to get to drop them. That's the whole thing, a competitive balance, get them closer to one another. You're going to have the teams that don't spend a lot of payroll all of a sudden have to spend like $100 million more, because a salary, if they ever got to it, would be at least a couple $100 million, high 100. I'm not sure. And there's teams that are under 100, so they would have to up their payroll a lot as well.
Yeah. Hey, let's go ahead and clip this conversation and just replay it in December when we get to do this all over again in earnest, when it looks like we are marching towards a bit of labor strife for Major League Baseball at a time that, like Jeff said, has been pretty darn good and pretty darn fun to watch. So I hope it gets worked out. Coming up next, though, speaking of strife, Mick Cronin always seems like he's upset about something. Even when it's going good, the UCLA head coach has some criticism for his conference that we'll hear next on Golic and Golic. As we wrap up with Golic and Golic, congratulations to the UCLA Bruins men's basketball team. An incredible win over the Purdue Boilermakers, one of the top teams in college basketball, ranked 4th at the time of this game. UCLA gets a 69-67 win, thanks in part to this Tyler Bilodeau game-winning three-pointer here for the Bruins in their own barn. It was an awesome moment. It was an awesome scene. And Mick Cronin didn't want to talk about any of that. Instead, took aim at his conference and their schedule makers for what he perceives as a slight. Take a listen.
And I want to thank the Big Ten for giving us 5 of our first 7 on the road, bringing Purdue here on Thursday night, where we don't get back in LA till Saturday night, and giving us the team pick to win the league on a 2 days rest after 5 of our first 7 on the road. I want to thank the Big Ten for that.
They're liable to make it worse next year.
It couldn't be much worse. Couldn't be much worse. A, I don't think they care about basketball. That's just my opinion. B, look, man, and they ain't moving the city of Los Angeles. I don't want them to, and they damn sure ain't moving UCLA, and I don't want them to. And we're in the league in the Midwest, so that's just going to be what it's going to be. But you ain't got to play 5 of your first 7 on the road and then come home and get the team picked to win the league on 2 days rest. I had 2 Hall of Fame coaches sent me a text. Why do you play Purdue tonight? I just saw you play Saturday at Ohio State. I said, I'll give you one better. They've been here since Thursday.
How about the writer throwing gas on the fire saying, could be worse next year?
Yeah, guy workshopping his 30-second set there in the crowd there. Incredible use as we talk about the use of press scrum time in post-game press conferences. I don't know. For me, Dad, I always stop short on scheduling conversations. What a complicated ball of wax that I'm not envious of, especially nowadays where you've got these bloated super conferences where you're trying to make all this happen. Like, I don't have the slightest idea what goes into that. And I can understand, Mick Cronin's baseline is salty, so this isn't surprising in the least. But is there any validity to this in your mind, this complaint?
Oh, listen, I'm with you. The complicated act of making out a schedule. And again, since this team is now, as Mick said, we're in a Midwest conference, right? So travel is going to be a mess for West Coast teams, but Midwest teams too. They're going to have to go to the West Coast. But his main complaint is playing 5 of the first 7 games on the road and then coming back. That is kind of a wild thing. Coming back later, Purdue is already in your city, being able to hang out. And you come in after they're in your city on 2 days rest and have to play them when they're actually in your city, actually chilling out. UCLA, 3 of their losses are to then number 5 Arizona, then number 8 Gonzaga, and then number 25 Iowa. They're 13-6, 5-3 in conference play. Again, I don't know enough about scheduling. I talking about being on the road 5 of the first 7 games, and he's right. The travel is going to be what it's going to be when you're in a Midwest conference. But you're right. He has kind of a salty disposition as it is, though.
Yeah, I don't know if you can say that a conference that has 5 teams in the top 11 doesn't care about basketball either.
Yeah,
traditionally, we know the Big Ten's been home to plenty of good teams, including this year. So, again, maybe it feels differently, especially when you're at UCLA right now that overall has been kind of down in a number of sports. You're in a conference that most certainly, like a lot of other ones, cares more about football than it does about basketball. And maybe that stings a bit, but I don't know. This did just seem like someone that was tired and had a staged event, especially after people were going to want to talk to him post-win. Congrats to the players, though. What a great effort.
Yeah, I mean, really a heck of a win. It's amazing he picked that time to, and I'm sure obviously he talked about the game. We just pulled one part of the presser, but what a great win for him. I mean, right? That'll get you headed in the right direction.
Yeah, to come in with all that adversity created by modern scheduling and still manage to get a win like that. Great for the Bruins. Hopefully Mick Cronin wakes up feeling better today. We'll wake up with you guys and feel better tomorrow here on Golic and Golic. Thanks for watching. For more Golic and Golic clips, make sure you subscribe to the FanDuel Sports Network YouTube channel.